Welcome to KNICKS BUZZ. Joining me back for more, Knicks historian, got EJ, and the one and only MARC BERMAN. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thanks for having me again. Hey, JCT.
Hey, Mark.
I'm like a kid on Christmas Eve when you two come through because I know it's going to be healthy Knicks talk. A lot to talk about. Mark, last night the New York Knicks had a feel-good win. It did feel a bit different given what's been swirling around the team and everything. Julius faced the media. What did you see from everyone's body language and just the relief that the players have felt?
Yeah, I was very impressed how happy Julius seemed after this win. Listen, it's against Sacramento, no Fox. They were at the end of their road trip. It was 11 days on the road. I mean, they were pretty tired, but the Knicks handled them so easily. And Julius, I felt on the court, he had a decisiveness to his game. He knew when to pass, knew when to shoot. He looked confident. He looked like early this season and obviously last season. But most of all, he's been staging this weird media boycott. He's been very grumpy the few times we've seen him, but he was in a very good place after last night's game, and he was talking about the future of the season and if we could get our act together, like maybe we could be clicking on all cylinders, later in the season, and we're still in the hunt. I mean, it was very positive stuff instead of his usual mumbo jumbo that has been a little alarming. But I don't know if you guys saw the tape of Julius. He looked like a different person after the game. He comes in all laughing. It was nice to see.
Do you think this might be a turning point for Julius and the Knicks at this point in the season, or are we still just going to have an up and down 500 year?
The thing with Julius in particular, when he's making his jump shots, his spirit is lifted and he just seems like a different guy. But when he's missing, and this is what Thibodeau is trying to get away from with Julius, when he's missing his shots, he doesn't need that bad body language. He needs the hustle on defense, even if he's not shooting well. Thibodeau says it all the time. It's like Julius can help us in so many ways. He's a rugged defender when he's really into it and really is energetic on the defensive end. But, he made an allusion to it after that horrible Miami game that, we need him more intense on the defensive end. So maybe it's finally hit home with Julius Randle. It's like he's got to be energetic on both ends of the court, no matter if the ball is going in or out. He was hitting his shots last night, but Memphis Wednesday night, he might be missing, but they still need the energy. And I think Julius is the key, and Derrick Rose will be another key when he comes back after the All-Star break. I'm hoping it's February 25th and not too much later, because if the Knicks want to be listen, I'm resigned to the play-in tournament at this point, but they still have a chance for the 6th seed. It is a bunched-up Eastern Conference.
Yeah, Mark, and I'm also, during this difficult stretch, I'm asked by Knicks fans all the time, is Julius held with the same account as other players, in terms of being held accountable? There's been, so many clips circling social media of him away from the team in huddles, not exactly close to bonding with players on the court as well. Do you feel like maybe they would have had a conversation, or given what's been going on, and also the chat's asking, if the Knicks had lost last night, do you think there would have been a different situation with Julius coming out?
Yeah, I don't know if Julius would have met with us after a loss last night. I do feel there was some talk with Thibodeau and at least the coaches. Kenny Payne is his guy from Kentucky. Johnny Bryan is a very vocal guy with the players. I do have a feeling they're really starting to talk to Julius and try to get him out of his funk. Listen, even Julius admitted last night, I was in a big slump on that road trip, but we played against 3 great teams: Cleveland, Miami, Milwaukee. So is this the turning point? I mean, everyone in the Knicks universe hopes it is, because without Julius playing at an all-star level, this team has no shot. It's built around Julius. And naturally, Barrett didn't even have a good game last night, and they still won wire to wire in a blowout fashion. But yeah, it will be interesting to see how Julius responds against Memphis.
Just a quick follow-up on that particular point. We can't forget about OB having a good game, Grimes having a good game, and Evan Fournier having a good game as well, too. It seemed to be an all-around balanced effort, despite the fact that Barrett had a poor game. Who do you think is the biggest X factor for the next 30 games? Is it OB, is it Grimes, or is it Evan Fournier?
Yeah, I think the statistics show that when Evan scores over 18 points, the Knicks record is terrific. He is the X factor. Had that great first quarter. He's been a streaky three-point shooter. That first quarter, he couldn't miss, and they were finding him on those kickouts, and he was wide open, and he was draining them. There are some nights Evan's energy is just not there, and I feel like he doesn't have the legs on the road and a back-to-back. He's got to be more consistent. They're paying him a lot of money. He was their key free agent signing. I'm resigned to the fact that Kemba Walker is never going to be Kemba Walker this year. Actually went scoreless last night. Kemba did. So Evan, I believe, is their X factor. A lot like Reggie Bullock last season was sort of an X factor. When he was hitting his three-point shots, usually the Knicks were victorious.
Yeah, and Mark, also last night on the other side, Sacramento, De'Aaron Fox was held out of the game. There's been some talk about the New York Knicks, exploring trade partners with the deadline coming up. His name's been out there. And also just back on the Julius Randle topic, I know, it was a bounce back win last night, but do you feel like there is a legitimate, strength to these talks that the Knicks are open to moving Julius? And if so, which trade partners do you see, could be likely?
Yeah, CT, I really feel that they're going to try to move on and do something big in the off season with Julius, whether keeping him or not. But I just feel that there was such a commitment to him. They better have a whopping package coming back to deal Julius at this point. And I don't know if his trade value is as solid as it could be. So I don't know if they're going to get that package that they would want. I know there's some in the Knicks organization that feel maybe they should take a step back to take a few steps forward. And I think EJ feels the same way. This season isn't going anywhere. Maybe it's time to restart the rebuild or restructure their goals. But I don't think that Leon Rose is going to get rid of Julius. But yes, Fox is a target. Scott Perry drafted him in his brief stint in Sacramento. Worldwide West is, a big part of the Kentucky program before he joined the Knicks as a consultant, agent, player relations. So he knows Fox pretty well. And Thibodeau loves a speedy point guard. He wants, and in fact, last night before the game, he talked, we got to push the pace and get some easy baskets. And Randall mentioned it too, how great that would be. The defense is so focused on stopping Julius. Julius would love to get a few easy baskets in transition to get him going. Fox would do that. He is the fastest player in the league. It's one reason Thibodeau really liked Kira Lewis coming out of the draft a couple of years ago when they passed on Halliburton. Kira Lewis was higher on their board than Tyrese Halliburton. But Fox would be a great get. What do you give up for him? I mean, EJ, what would you give? Would you give Randall straight up for Fox? I know some Knicks fans are in favor of that.
Mark, that's a big question. And I think that's one of those questions you ask when you're looking at a team that's a 500 team. And I think this is the crisis we're facing right now as an organization, as Knicks fans, is we don't know what we are. Were we more last year or were we more the year before? So the issue in terms of what moves do we make, we're not the Lakers. The Lakers can say they're having a down year and that, just a couple of healthy moves and like a healthier AD, they know their championship caliber. we are not anywhere close to being championship caliber. And so that places the organization in a weird space, that places Julius Randle in a weird space, because perhaps we're asking him to do things that a real championship contender wouldn't be asking him to do. So what do we do with the Julius Randle? It's a hard thing, because the way you get the pieces to become a championship contender, it's either via trade, it's either drafting, and 500 teams, they have a hard time acquiring that level talent. So I don't know if I trade Julius, because he's a good player. He's not a great player. He's not a superstar game-changing player. But how do we acquire that game-altering player so that we're not stuck in that level of mediocrity? I really don't know. So, CT, what do you think?
I think you let the season play out. For me, but you obviously see what's out there. But I don't see that big fish available in this trade deadline period that's going to move the needle. I was more thinking, you explore the Julius talk right now. If the dysfunction is just at a point where, you just can't continue, Mark. But it's up to the leaders and of the organization and the coach to hold him accountable. And we're hopefully seeing signs after last night. But I wanted to ask you, Mark. James Dolan. Is there any inkling as to how he's seeing Leon Rose's performance so far running this team?
Yeah, see, I think last season was such a joy for Dolan. He expected better. He expected him to take a step forward from last season. And I think they overachieved so greatly last season with that roster. And it's a reason why Thibodeau wins Coach of the Year. I mean, that roster was, not 10 games over 500. And we've talked about the fluky nature of last season, a 72-game schedule. But I think Dolan expected more, and Leon has to explain to him, listen, we went really ahead of the curve last season, and now we're sort of leveling off. We can't expect another jump after we made such a massive jump last season. And Dolan is not a patient guy. And as he showed with the Rangers, he made a lot of big changes with the Rangers because he saw how great the Knicks had progressed and the Rangers weren't progressing. Now this year they are. But, he's always a wild card in the situation. Is he telling Leon Rose right now, let's make something happen in a big way at the trade deadline, or is he expecting more patience? Last trade deadline, the Knicks were extremely patient. They loved the camaraderie of the ball club, and they didn't want to do anything, and they didn't. But this year, again, the expectation was greater, and now I think they're going to do something, especially to open up something for Reddish. And it might be just they get rid of Kemba for a second-round pick, and the player they get back, they waive. I mean, maybe it's a minor thing like that. But they are going to do something at the trade deadline. The roster right now isn't correct. The management wants to see Cam Reddish play because they think they have a real solid young player on their roster who can't get in the game.
I think, so Mark, would you say, are we buyers or sellers? Are we actively trying to make the playoffs, or are we taking a step back saying, maybe this is not the year?
I mean, it's the biggest question that Thibodeau and Leon have to figure out. And listen, I've been told even in the off season that Thibodeau and Leon, listen, they've been friends for a long time, but they didn't see eye to eye completely on the off season. Thibodeau wanted Reggie Bullock back because he loved his defense and he loved the chemistry. He wasn't crazy, I'm told, about Kemba. The analytics department, and I've reported this, pushed that Kemba thing through for the most part. So Leon and Tom wants a lot of input. He feels he deserves it because he made the Derrick Rose trade, and the Derrick Rose trade turned out to be spectacular last season. So he feels he's earned a big say into what happens February 10th. Tom wants to win now. He doesn't want to give up anything. Listen, I think he wants Kemba off the team. I mean, he showed that by his actions, taking him out of the rotation for a while. But I don't think he wants to just do something that's going to hurt their chances of making a big playoff push.
Yep. And some young players. Reports, Mark, that they're field calls for some young players. Emmanuel Quickly, which isn't surprising given the fact that he averages normally about 11 to 15 minutes. And Obi Toppin as well, another situation we've touched on in the past. But do you feel like they are really open to moving on from these young players?
Well, the whole point in stockpiling assets is to not make a lateral move, but make a big move for a star, because Julius needs help and RJ needs help. So that's why Thibodeau, with the Reddish move, he kind of saw it as a lateral move. He's like, he's not better than Burks right now, and he's not better than Fournier right now. So, Thibodeau's not going to play him. But if they could stockpile a package with a Toppin, even a Quickly, although they really like Quickly and he's a three-point shooter and they need three-point shooting and he's improved his defense and he's improved his ball handling. But if they could stockpile a bunch of assets to get a star back, who's that star player? Lillard's out right now. That's why I feel like this big move that Knicks fans are anticipating on February 10th, I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's an off-season situation. And I think Lillard's going to want out, but when he's healthy, who knows about Bradley Beal? The Wizards are in the tank sort of right now, and he's going to be a free agent. I just feel the big moves are going to happen in the offseason, but they will make a move February 10th. But I don't think it's going to be that blockbuster. And I think Toppin is going to have to be saved for the blockbuster. And then there's Mitchell Robinson, who doesn't have his contract extension yet. Yeah. He's playing almost well enough to get it. I mean, maybe there's some concern still about his health and about his versatility, but even last night he drove to the basket for a layup or dunk, and it's the second time he's done that, so he's expanding his game a little bit. I mean, does Mitchell Robinson deserve a contract extension right now, EJ?
The question you asked me is actually the question I was about to ask you. And that's the weird thing about teams that are 500 is that you have these moves and these questions where it's like you don't have a lot of room for error. So Mitchell Robinson is one of these players that I'm thinking almost every Knicks fan loves because, he's a homegrown Knicks player. He's a steal from the draft, given where we got him. But then it's that question of, do we actually extend him? Do we actually dip into the salary cap to give him that money when he isn't a player, he isn't a center that extends or spreads the floor? And that's the concern, is that we need shooters around Julius. If Julius is going to be our number one or our number or 1B, we need shooters around him. But if we sign Mitch, we're clogging up the lane. And so that's the question. And I love Mitch. I love his hustle. I love his energy. You can see how the team plays differently when he's in the game. We love the fact that he can get up there and, give a lob whenever we get into transition, which is once every 7 games. But, the concern is he doesn't spread the floor, and will his game ever really mature? So if you're asking me, do I sign him? That's a hard one. It's Knicks Nation might kill me. I might have to trade him and make someone else make that decision for me instead of making the decision myself, because we're not at that point yet where we can risk that.
CT, do you give him the contract extension that the Celtics gave Robert Williams, who's a sort of a similar rim runner, not much of a shooter, shot blocker?
Yeah, I'm leaning towards I do now, to be honest with you. I think he's shown some consistency in a year that where not many players have been consistent. But I completely agree with EJ with his shortcomings in terms of his game. But we're seeing nice little flashes. Like last night, he's putting the ball on the floor, Mark. He's always been vocal on social media about wanting to expand his game more. But you know what? He needs to improve on his free throws.
Oh yeah,
they look ugly.
Well, he's changed his motion, and it's more of a line drive free throw, and it's still not working. And he gets to the line a lot, and that's why the Knicks don't have a shooting coach right now. They assign different coaches, assistant coaches to different players, but there's no one standard shooting coach. I'm a little surprised by that, especially because the three-point shooting has become such a premium in the NBA. But their free throw shooting has not been good. I honestly feel in the offseason they should hire somebody who specializes in shooting. But Mitch gets to the line too many times to be a 60% free throw shooter. And he did change his form, and he did change the arc of his free throws, and it's still spotty.
Can I jump in here for a second and ask Mark a question? Speaking of the Knicks offense and the fact that you mentioned that the Knicks don't have a shooting coach, who's responsible on the staff for the offense? You hear about different teams having like an offensive coordinator a la football. Like even a Jason Kidd or a Greg Popovich. What's happening with the Knicks? Do we have an offensive strategist? Because it almost seems as if a lot of times when I'm watching the game, it's the same basic play.
Yeah.
Pick from the top. Someone's supposed to roll, and Obi or a four is standing in the corner, or Evan is standing in the corner, not really moving. So who's the offensive strategist on the team?
There really is none. Thibodeau has a weird relationship with his assistant coaches. They're huge in practice, and they are assigned to individual players. So Kenny Payne works with the big men. Johnny Bryant works with the guards. Darren Ehrman works with various guys here and there. But the offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator is Tom Thibodeau. He's one of the few coaches during a timeout. He doesn't really consult with his assistants. What are you seeing out there? Tom Thibodeau is in his he just celebrated a birthday, 64 maybe. He does it his way. And this is an offense he's run throughout his head coaching career. So strategy-wise, his assistants are for practice and to work out with the players. He loves assistants used in that form, but in terms of, he's got his guys. Andy Greer has been with him forever, so they know what Tom likes, but it's been the same, and they haven't adjusted a lot, and a lot of fans are upset that the offense seems stagnant, especially when the ball doesn't seem to move. The ball moved last night for sure, and partly because Julius was really making good decisions, but you're right, there's no offensive coordinator. The defensive coordinator we know is Thibodeau, but he doesn't really have an offensive guy. If there was an offensive guy, I would say it's Johnny Bryant, because he does work with the guards. And but again, Johnny and Tom, if you watch the game, I don't know if on TV you could see the huddles and after the timeout, but Tom just goes right to the huddle. He's not consulting. A lot of head coaches talk to their assistants, but Tom does not.
Yeah, and good segue. To me, Tibbs's offensive punch is Derrick Rose. Relies on Derrick Rose heavily. It's quite bittersweet, Mark, EJ, in terms of, Derrick Rose is going to come back and make this team better. There's no doubt. But is that going to be at the expense of Deuce McBride, and some of these other players as well? It's somewhat of an awkward fit now, Mark.
Yeah, it's too bad with Deuce. He's such a good defensive player, and he's frustrated. You could tell that he's not getting more playing time as a rookie like Quentin Grimes is getting. But his time will come because he's a Thibodeau-type player, and Thibodeau pushed for the drafting of McBride. Some of the college scouts weren't crazy about him, weren't sure about his consistency of his three-point shot. And McBride knows he's got to be a better three-point shooter to get more playing time. We'll see how the season unfolds. I'm telling you, Kemba Walker is not in Thibodeau's long-range plans even this season. So if they don't trade Kemba and he's still there, I would not be shocked if the team is not winning, if Kemba is yanked from the rotation and they give McBride another shot to start and just to see how it goes. That would be a desperation move, but I still think it could be in the cards if the Knicks are not winning.
Yeah, and appreciate your time, Mark. I know you've got a jet in a minute, but just quickly, great piece on Rokas Jokubaitis, another point guard the New York Knicks selected out in Europe. Is there any talks in terms of the Knicks are seriously looking at him for next season? Is that what this trip is about?
Well, I like how you pronounced his name. I don't think I could do the same. Yeah, listen, I think next season he'll be on the roster. They were looking at him at Summer League and wondering, hey, maybe we could rush him and get him on the roster this season. But McBride looked really good in Summer League, and they figured Rokas could use a year in Spain, solid Spanish league, playing in the Euro League. He's playing very well. His three-point shot is falling. He's a good ball handler. He's dogged on defense. My Knicks newsletter was a focus on Rokas, and the team brass will visit him in Spain after the trade deadline. I don't know how big a group is going over, but they want to see him play. They want to meet with him. They want to take him out to dinner. I think there's a really good shot he'll be on the roster, and we all know the Knicks still need a point guard. And listen, maybe he's going to be a career backup. I don't know, but they really do like him, and we'll see what happens. He's got a tricky buyout also. He's signed like a 5-year deal with Barcelona, so it's going to take some machinations. But I think if I had a gamble, I think he's on the roster next year.
Oh, okay. Wow. Yep. Yeah, he definitely looks promising. And the scouting report said he would be a solid pro. Yeah, EJ, is there anything else that you'd like to get in just before Mark leaves us?
Yeah, just really quickly. So we shouldn't expect a super huge move before the deadline. But if you had to say one player aside from Kemba, you would think would probably be on the move, whether it be Burks or someone else on the roster, a Fournier, who would you expect to be moved before the February 10th deadline?
It would be really ironic if they traded both Evan and Kemba at the deadline, the two big free agent signings. I don't see Evan on the move. I think that they still feel maybe this offseason they could do something. But Kemba he's just not a Thibodeau player right now. And I feel, listen, Spencer Dinwiddie could be on the trading block. I know some Knicks scouts really like Spencer, wanted to make a bigger play for Spencer Dinwiddie. They still need a point guard. Even when Rose is back, they could use a point guard, but they need to shed a player to play Reddish, because right now Thibodeau won't play Reddish until they have a spot in the rotation. So there will be a move at the deadline, at least one or two moves. I just don't see that big blockbuster. Listen, unless you consider Spencer Dinwiddie, if they could put together something, that could be ideal. I don't see them going after Simmons. I know there's been some reports of slight interest. That contract is too outrageous, too much of a risk.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. But this has been fun. Mark, always appreciate your time. And hopefully we'll have you back maybe before the trade deadline next week. Appreciate you joining EJ and myself.
Thanks so much, CT, EJ. I really enjoyed it. And we'll know a lot more February 10th during that West Coast trip.
Yep. And you've got a lot of fans, our viewers, Mark. They love your work. They say keep pressing, keep asking those questions that we all want to hear. So keep it up.
Yeah, it's fun. Thibodeau, I've known Thibodeau for a long, long time. So some people think that Thibodeau is really angry at me, but he's just needling me pretty much. I've known him since his first stint with the Knicks as an assistant coach, and he's a really good guy off camera. You know, he's not the ogre that some media types have portrayed him as.
Yep. Yeah. Thanks, Mark. Enjoy your day, and happy Lunar New Year.
Yes, you too, guys. Thanks very much for having me. And
thanks a lot, Mark.
Take care.
Take care, and thanks, EJ. Appreciate your time, and
of course, my pleasure.
Let's do it again soon, and appreciate the chat. I'll see you on the next one. Peace.